week. So the first thing I want to do is shout out a couple of people that have been working really hard. They've been making contact. They've been coming to office hours. Madison McKinsey, excellent job. Madia, love how hard you've been working. Zarin, great job reaching out. Paige, great job reaching out. So those of you that have really been putting in that effort, that detail into your work, I'm seeing what you're doing, I'm loving it, and it's gonna be reflected in PowerSchool by the end of today. So please guys, make sure that you're consistently checking PowerSchool at least once a week towards the end of the week. Of course, always text me if you have any questions. So that all said, here's the mini lesson video for today. First, let's start with a quick announcement. I said this in the mini lesson video yesterday, but some good news about your projects. I know a lot of people are still getting tech set up. A lot of people are having trouble with the online learning format. So I've modified the project for this week a bit so that we're focusing on the parts that I, as the teacher, really care about. And that's step 1 and step 2. So if you look at these boxes, step 1 of the COVID-19 project was to do research. Step 1 at this point should be complete. That was your research graphic organizer. If you don't know what the research graphic organizer is, go back to the video from lesson 2. That will help you out. Step 2 is your interview. We have not gone over how to do step 2. That's what today is all about. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Step 3, which was to create that PRSA or community action plan. Here's the good news. Step 3 has been canceled. So I'm getting rid of it. If you do it, great. It's extra credit. I'll give you lots of extra credit project points. If you don't do it, that's okay. The only 2 grades which will go in as assessments will be your research graphic organizers, which we will use again in 3 weeks when we do our unit end project, and the interview, which we're talking about today. If you have any questions, please come to office hours. Please come to office hours. Okay, now let's get to the learning target for today. I will be able to create open questions in order to gather information on how COVID-19 affects my community. Oh, and look at that, what a terrible error. Sorry guys, affects with an A, my community. Okay. So one of the newer terms that I noticed in this learning target and that you guys should have noticed is this term open questions. We probably have an idea about what might make an open question. If you want to pause the video right now and just think to yourself, what are the qualities of an open question? Go ahead. Open questions are what we're going to talk about in today's mini lesson. Open questions are the opposite. They're not equal to closed questions. So today we're going to talk about the difference between these 2 types of questions. In your interview, you want to be asking open questions. If you're asking closed questions in your interview, that's not good. So we want to stay away from closed questions. We want to be asking open questions. Interviews are a great way to figure out how an issue is affecting your community, how an issue is affecting your family. It's a tool that a lot of historians and journalists use on the regular. And I want interviewing to be a skill that you guys develop because we will use it in bigger projects for social studies in the future. So again, guys, in our interviews, we want to be asking open questions. So in order to ask open questions, first we need to know what an open question is. An open question does not require a specific answer. It allows the person answering. Sorry, guys. I'm going to start that again. Open questions do not require a specific answer. Open questions allow the person answering to have freedom in their answer. Closed questions, open questions are the opposite of closed questions. So closed questions require a specific answer. They do not allow the person answering freedom in their answer. Closed questions generally have a right answer and a wrong answer. So let's look at some of these differences in practice in real life through some examples. So I'm going to flash a question on the screen, and I want you to identify whether the question should be considered an open question or a closed question. Here we go. What is the purpose of government? Pause the video now and in your head, decide whether this should be considered an open question or a closed question. So at this point, you should have paused the video and you've given yourself time to decide whether this question is an open question or a closed question. This question can be considered. Here comes the answer. So if you haven't paused and thought independently, pause the video. This question can be considered an open question. The reason this can be considered an open question is there is no real right answer. There's a lot of different ways that you could answer this question. You might say that the purpose of government is to keep people safe. You might say the purpose of government is to organize a country. You might say the purpose of government is to maintain relationships with other countries. So there's no one correct answer to this question. You could answer it in a lot of different ways, which makes this question an open question. Let's try another example. What type of government allows people to vote for their leaders? Pause the video now and decide on your own whether this would be considered an open question or a closed question. At this point, you should have paused the video and decided for yourself whether this question was an open question or a closed question. The correct answer is that this question is a closed question. The reason is there's a right answer here. There are only some types of government that allow people to vote for their leaders. Democracy is the only type of government which allows people to vote for their leaders. If you said dictatorship as an answer to this question, that would be incorrect, because in a dictatorship, there's one person on top who controls everything. So because there's a right answer and a wrong answer to this question, there's not a lot of different ways we can answer this question. Because of those reasons, this can be considered a closed question. This is what we want to avoid on our interviews. You don't want to be asking the people you are interviewing fact-based questions. For example, if you ask them, what are the symptoms of coronavirus? That's a fact-based question. There's a right answer and a wrong answer. You want to avoid closed questions that have a right answer and a wrong answer in your interview. Let's try one more for people who might be struggling with this difference between open and closed questions. Oh, and I'm sorry, guys, there's a typo there. Honestly, this lesson's full of typos today. My bad, guys. All right. Last question. How can you help stop the spread of coronavirus? Pause the video now and decide whether this should be considered an open question or a closed question. At this point, you should have paused the video and decided for yourself whether this is an open question or a closed question. We can say that this is an open question. The reason this can be considered an open question is that there's a lot of different ways that you can answer it. There's so many different responses. You could say washing your hands frequently. You could say social distancing, not coming within 6 feet of each other, not riding the subway. There's so many different answers to this question that we can consider it an open question. It allows the person answering freedom with their response. In your interviews, you want to be asking open questions. If you look at your daily packet for today, you will notice on the second page that the Step 2 COVID-19 interview graphic organizer is there. This is what you are submitting today. So I'm going to start by reading out the directions on the top, and then you guys will use your quote unquote class time today to complete this interview graphic organizer. You should submit this by the end of day today. So here we go, from the start of the directions. At this point, it's difficult to find someone who hasn't been affected by the coronavirus. Interviews are a great way to collect information on how an issue is actually affecting people in the community. In this project, Step 2 requires you to interview anyone affected by the coronavirus. This can be a guardian, sibling, aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, cousin, corner store owner, etc. You can also interview another HBA student. However, this person may not be in your grade, so you can't just interview your friend. Before interviewing the person you have chosen, you must come up with 8 questions to ask during your interview. Here are some examples of questions you may ask. You can use these examples. They can all be considered open questions. How has your daily routine changed as a result of coronavirus? What about the coronavirus worries you? What do you hope will change as a result of the coronavirus? So all of these are examples of open questions that you could ask during your interview. Your task today is to write 8 questions that you can ask in an interview. You will be actually interviewing whoever you choose. You need to record your interview, and you will submit the recording of your interview in a separate post, which I will put up on Google Classroom by the end of the day. So on this graphic organizer, in this space at the bottom of the graphic organizer where you have room to write your questions, what you need to write is the 8 questions that you're going to use in your interview. The actual recorded interview will be due on Monday. Okay, please come to office hours if you are confused. Thanks, guys.